Good morning, everyone. Students, welcome to the science class. We are going to start writing a science experiment book from now onwards. Okay. Student experiment plays many roles in science. One of its important roles is to test the theories and principles and to provide the basis for scientific knowledge, right? So, with this importance of experiments, okay, let us understand the experiments from our book, from our journal one by one, and we will start writing now, okay, our science experiment book. Okay, so are you all ready? Hello, students. This is Sniti Mahapankar, your science teacher. Students, we have completed our semester portion. Yes, now we will start writing our science experiment book. So standard 8th class, this is your science experiment book. Yes, you all have it. On the first page, students, on the first page, what do I see? I see a small piece of box where I have to fill my information like name, school, division, roll number. These information you have to fill it up. Okay, this is my copy, so I have filled my information here. Yes, page number 2. Student, this is your page number 2. Page number 2, what do I see? I can see list of experiments. Yes, these are the list of experiments, students, that we need to understand, we need to study for standard 8 class. Okay, so total 15 experiments I see. Out of 15, total 9 experiments we have to perform, we have to study, we have to write, students, in the experiment book. Total 9 experiments we need to write. Okay, so second page will give you the information about experiments that we have to study. Coming to page number 3, this is your index page. Okay, index page. Okay, how you have to write in this page. Let us see that. Students, if you see, the very first thing talks about serial number. Serial number will be your experiment number. Then comes title of the experiment. What is the title? If I am writing experiment number 1, the title of the experiment is study of lactobacilli. Then again comes date, page and teacher signature. You have to write the date, okay, on which date you get the video of the explanation of the experiment, that you will write, and the page number from where you have started writing the experiment. Yes, that page number you will write. Understood? Serial number, title of the experiment, date and page. This you have to fill one by one once you complete writing the topics. Can you see how I have written total 9, and then in a neat, clean handwriting you have to write it down. Okay, this is the index page. Once you complete writing, the teacher will sign here. So teacher's signature will be given at the last. Okay. Page number 5. Students, this is the page where you will start writing your experiment. So here can you see what I have written? Experiment number 101. Okay. Date will be the same date on which date you receive your explanation and PDF. That date you will fill here, and that date should match with the index page that you are writing. I hope you understood. Okay. Then aim, requirements, procedure, inference and conclusion. Under subheadings you have to write it down. Okay. Writing material or writing part will be given in the PDF. Okay, in PDF form you will get all detailed information about aim, requirements, procedure, inference, conclusion, observation, everything you will get. Okay, so you have to write it down with a neat and clean handwriting. Okay, can you see procedure how I have written point wise? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So point wise I have written the procedure. Now yes, you can write observation or either on this page, yes, or you can write observation on the this page, left hand side also. Can you see diagrams and observations? Okay, many a times if you have space here, you can write it down here. Since in this experiment observation was in one or two lines, so what I have done, I have combined observations, inference and conclusion, and then I have written in a paragraph form. Okay, if you want you can make it separate also, observations. Clear? So in both sides you can write. Observations can be written on left side or right side. Okay, but diagrams need to be drawn only on my left side. Can you see? For this experiment number 1, I have drawn diagram of lactobacilli. Yes, you have to draw with sharpened pencils, nicely put it in boxes. Okay, so this was your experiment number 1. I hope it is clear. Okay. One more experiment I have written, students, for you. Experiment number 2. Can you see experiment number 202? And what is the aim of the experiment? To observe fungus on the bread. Okay. Requirements, procedure, everything is written point wise. Then observations. Can you see I have made a different section of observation here. Since it is a big paragraph of 3 to 4 lines, I have made a different section. Inference and conclusion is also written here. Sometimes, okay, if you don't have space to write, you can cut this remark section. Can you see? You can put a slash and you can complete the answer. Okay. So this way you can adjust writing the journal if the matter is long enough or big enough. Then comes your 6th page. So here you can see I have drawn diagram of mucor. We are observing fungus. So this is the diagram of mucor, students. Can you see how neatly it is labeled? Use scales, okay, by labeling. And then put it in the box nicely without spelling mistake. Write all the labelings, okay, correctly. Okay, so this is how I have drawn. Okay, with the help of these 2 experiments, I think you have got an idea how to write the journal. Yes, are you all confident now? Okay, student, one more thing I will show you in this journal, which is very much informative. Okay, on the very first page, here, can you see? Different types of laboratory instruments, right from test tube stand, spring balance, we have bell jar, magnetic needles, so many things they have shown in 2 pages actually. Here also and at the last also they have, yes, here can you see? Okay, compound microscope, dropping bottle, funnel, dissecting microscope. So different types of laboratory instruments which we use. Yes, that is shown in these 2 pages. So you can go through this. You can know the names of the names of the laboratory instruments from here. Okay, I hope you have understood this particular journal now. Okay. So this was it, students. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much. Hello, students. Good morning, everyone. Students, today we are going to learn our science experiment number 1. So are you all ready and excited? So let's begin. Experiment number 1, study of lactobacilli. Students, we are going to study or understand this particular experiment under 5 subheadings. Aim of the experiment, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. Okay, so under this 5 subheadings, we are going to learn our experiment number 1. So let's start. What is the aim of the experiment? What is the purpose for carrying out the experiment? Okay, is to observe lactobacilli in curd or buttermilk. Students, lactobacilli is known as a friendly bacteria. Okay, it is very important for all of us to keep our intestines healthy. Okay, so it's a useful bacteria. What are the requirements? Curd or buttermilk, glass slide, we will require cover slips, 1% methylene blue solution, blotting paper and microscope. These are the materials or requirements for this particular experiment. Now let's understand how to carry out the activity or the procedure for experiment number 1. First point, take a very small drop of curd on the glass slide. With the help of a toothpick or dropper, smear it continuously till a thin film of the curd is formed on the slide. Okay, so we have to take a drop of curd on the glass slide and then we have to spread it, okay, with the help of a toothpick, and then we have to form a thin film of the curd basically. Second step is let the smear dry. Let the smear of curd dry. Then what we will do, we will add a small drop of methylene blue solution on the microscopic slide. Okay, and this is staining. So a microscopic slide means glass slide. Okay, and this is the staining agent or the staining solution for the slide. It will stain the slide. It will give a particular color to the slide. Fourth point or fourth step is place a cover slip on top. Remove excess solution around the cover slip with the blotting paper. Students, while placing the cover slip on the top of the smear, okay, we have to take care that excess solution, okay, which is all around, should be cleaned with the help of blotting paper. Okay, because when we are adding methylene blue, okay, stains of methylene blue, okay, it can be around the cover slip, so we have to clean with the blotting paper. Okay, place the slide on the stage of the microscope starting with lower magnification. After observing the bacteria under low power as tiny dots, shift the eyepiece to the high power magnification. So our preparation of the glass slide or the microscopic slide is finished at stage number 4. Stage number 5 will be observing the slide under the microscope. So initially lower magnification and then afterwards high power magnification. Yes, this is the observation time. What will you see or what do we see, students? We see cells of lactobacilli, so many cells of lactobacilli. Yes, this is the image, this is the picture. Okay, small cells of lactobacilli. They are stained with the help of methylene blue solution. Okay, remember this. Okay, what are the observations? Lactobacilli are rod-shaped bacterium. They do not show nuclei or cell organelles. They are prokaryotic cells. Yes, they are rod-shaped bacteria. Shape is what? Rod-shaped. They do not show any nuclei or cell organelles and therefore they are called as prokaryotic organisms. So what is the conclusion, students? These bacteria belong to the kingdom Monera. Lactobacilli produce lactic acid from the fermentation of carbohydrates. Okay, and they therefore carry out curdling process of the milk. Okay, lactobacilli produce which type of acid? Lactic acid. Okay, and therefore they carry out curdling process of the milk. Okay, I hope you have understood the very first experiment. Okay, experiment number 1. Clear? Next experiments we will see on the next day. Okay, thank you. Good morning, all my sunshines. Students, let's begin our day doing a science activity. Okay, with this we are going to get the information on how to grow mold on bread. So do you want to know how to grow mold on bread? Yes, so come and join me. Observe the video carefully till last. Okay, it will explain you the step-by-step process how to grow mold on bread. A very good morning to all my dear students. Standard 8th class, are you ready to perform experiment number 2? That is the title we have, to observe fungus on bread. Okay. To perform this experiment, students, first we have to grow mold or fungus on our bread. Okay. So how to do that? That I'm going to show you right now. Okay. Before starting the activity, please arrange the materials that would be required. A glass of water, a piece of bread and a container. Correct? A glass of water, piece of bread and a container. You can use Ziploc bag also. Okay, if you have Ziploc plastic bag also you can use as a container, but better you take a container. Whatever I am trying to show you, take that only. Okay, that is easy, that is easily available at home. Okay, so let's start the activity. Students, take the piece of bread in your hand and sprinkle some water on both the sides of the bread. Yes, you have to dampen this bread with little water. Don't soak the bread into water, you just have to sprinkle it. Okay, a little moisture we are giving to this piece of bread. We are making it moist on the both sides. Now it is moist, and now I have to place this in the container. Okay, sorry, yeah, this is my container, and I am going to close this container tightly and keep it in my kitchen shelf. Okay, we have to keep this box in warm and humid air or humid temperature. Okay, you don't have to disturb it. Don't open it after 1 day, 2 day. Don't try to open the box. After 2 to 3 days only you open this container and observe the fungus or mold growing on bread. Okay, I hope you have understood the activity. Okay, how to grow mold on bread. Thank you. A very good morning to all my dear students. Research suggests that by doing experiments, we learn the material better and develop a variety of skills in the other subject areas and with greater purpose. So students, let's think, observe, experiment and validate all our findings. Okay, so let's begin with our science experiment number 2. Are you all ready? Experiment number 2, observation of fungus. We are going to learn this particular experiment under 5 subheadings: aim, requirements, procedure, observations, and at the last, inference and conclusion. The aim of the experiment is to observe fungus on the bread. Okay, before discussing the requirements for this experiment, students, I request you all to go through the video that I have already shared with you. Okay, I have been demonstrating about how to grow mold on the bread. Okay, that particular video, I hope you must have seen that. Okay, after 3 to 4 days, students, the bread appears, okay, like this. Okay, mold of mucor fungus grows on the bread. Green color texture can you see on the piece of bread? This is stale piece of bread that we have already prepared. Second, glass slide I will require, cover slips, a forceps, blotting paper and microscope. Okay, so let us understand the procedure for this experiment. Students, first 3 steps we have already carried out. First, step number 1 was take a piece of bread, dampen it with a little water and keep it in a container. That I have already shown you. Second is place the container in a warm and humid corner. Already done. Observe the bread piece after 2 to 3 days. The stale bread shows fine cottony growth, and these are fungal hyphae belonging to mucor, which is a genus of fungus. Okay, mucor appears on the bread. What we have to do next is we have to take this few fragments of this tuft, of this cottony growth, okay, which is nothing but fungus, and we have to observe this under the microscope. These few fragments we are going to take on the glass slide with the help of the forceps. Okay, you must be thinking how to take it now on the glass slide, but with the help of forceps. Students, if at all you have done this activity at home, if you have tried this activity at home, okay, and after 3 to 5 days when you are observing the change on the bread, okay, what after doing the activity, students, I request you to put the trash in the dustbin appropriately and wash your hands. Okay, if you have done this activity. This is the bread, and then we have to see under the microscope. Observation time, very important. Under the microscope we are going to see our fungus. Yes, it appears like this, students. Okay, we have a sporangium structure. Sporangium contains spores, sporangiophore. Yes, then we have structures like rhizoids, hypha, stolon, spores, sporangiophore, columella. These are feed spores, actually apophysis. So this is the activity from lesson number 1 that we are seeing, right? Let's understand the observations. Most of the fungal hyphae are horizontally spreading. There are some erect hyphae, okay, columns. They are called sporangiophores. At the end of the sporangiophores, there are rounded structures called sporangia. A single sporangium can be seen liberating the black colored spores. The root-like structures are called as rhizoids, which are clearly seen under microscope. So what we have done, students, we have tried to find out different parts of our mucor of fungus. Sporangiophores, sporangia, rhizoids, these particular structures we are going to understand and observe. What is the inference and conclusion? Let's understand that. See, mucor is a fungus that will decompose carbohydrates, which is present where? In the bread. And they are going to convert it into inorganic substances without carbon containing substances. Yes, mucor is a non-green, yes, heterotrophic and eukaryotic in nature. Okay, it is a saprotrophic organism and hence seen growing on the organic decomposing bread. Saprotrophic, okay, which grows on other substances. Okay, they feed on other substances. Since it can be called as saprophytic, it is placed under the kingdom fungi. Understood? These are heterotrophic. They depend on other organisms, other food material. Yes, but they are eukaryotic in nature. That also we have to remember. With this, we have completed experiment number 2, students. Observation of fungus on the bread. Okay, next set of experiments we will see in the next upcoming days. Thank you. Good morning, my dear students. Science experiments promote discovery and learning. Discovering new ideas is an integral part of learning science. So with this importance of science experiments, let us start with our science experiment number 3. Students, experiment number 1 and 2 was related to chapter number 1. Yes, this experiment number 3 is from lesson number 3, force and pressure. Okay, so let's understand this experiment. Are you all ready? We are going to learn experiment number 3, study of balanced and unbalanced forces. Study of balanced and unbalanced forces. Students, we are going to understand this experiment with the help of 5 subheadings. Yes, we are going to see aim of the experiment, requirements, what materials we will require, procedure, what steps you have to carry out, observations, what will be your observations after performing the experiment, and last we have inference and conclusion. Okay, we will summarize, we will understand from the observations, okay, about this experiment. So let's get started. What is the aim of the experiment? To study the balanced and unbalanced forces by using the materials available in day-to-day life. Materials available in day-to-day life, using that we are going to study this particular experiment number 3. Okay, what are the materials that we would need, or what are the requirements? I would require a cardboard box, a thick string, 2 weighing pans. You must have seen the weighing pan balance, right? So 2 weighing pans I would require. Here I would require 2 masses of 10 gram and 1 mass of 50 gram weight. Okay, I would require. And a smooth surface table. Yes, a table with smooth surface I would require to carry out this experiment. Let us understand the procedure now. Students, can we observe the picture? Okay, this is the arrangement that we have to do. Let us see the procedure one by one. Place the cardboard box on the table. Tie thick strings to the opposite cardboard box sides of the box and take the strings on both the sides of the table as shown in the figure. Basically, observe the figure. Yes, you will understand what you have to do. You have to make two holes, yes, on the opposite sides of the cardboard box, and then you have to attach strings, and then we have to suspend it on both the sides of the table. Okay. Tie two weighing pans to the free ends of the string. Now two ends will be free of the strings. Now please tie these two weighing pans. Okay. What we have to do? We have to keep equal masses of say 10 grams each in both the pans. As I said, first I would require what? Weight of 10 grams each. So what I will do? I will place 10 grams weight in both the pans, and I will observe the box kept on the table. Okay, I will just see what changes happens. Next, what I will do? Now replace the mass in one of the pans by the mass of 50 grams. See, initially 10 grams I have added to the weighing pans. Now in one of the pan I will remove the 10 grams and I will add 50 grams. Okay, initially same mass was there. Now the mass is not equal. Please notice this. Okay, and then what we will do? Observe the motion of the box which is kept on the table and record your observation. Okay, then we have to see the motion of the box, where it goes. I hope the procedure is clear. Let us understand the observations. First observation, let us see students what happens. See, when both the pans contain equal masses of 10 grams, what happens? The box does not move on the table. The box is still. Okay, the box which is placed on the table is still. It is not moving. When I place 50 grams, let us see that observation explanation. See, when one pan has a mass of 50 grams and the other has a mass of 10 grams, the box starts moving in the direction of the pan with a mass of 50 grams. Students, obviously the pan is having now higher weight, yes, than the other pan. Yes, 10 grams is less than 50. So what will happen? The box will try to move towards the pan which contains 50 grams weight. Unequal masses. First it was equal masses, now we have unequal masses. So what the conclusion is, let us understand, or what we can infer from this, let us understand that. When equal masses are kept in two pans, okay, when equal masses are kept in two pans, equal gravitational force acts on both the pans. It means two equal forces act on the box in opposite direction. Gravitational force is equal on both the sides of the pan. Hence, the effective force becomes zero and the box does not move on the table. These two forces are called as balanced forces. So, very first example, 10 grams, that is an example of balanced forces. Okay, now let us understand the other type, that is unbalanced forces. Very simple to understand, students. When we keep unequal masses means one contains 10 grams, other contains 50 grams. Now it becomes unequal masses. That means what happens? Unequal forces act on both the pans. So when unequal forces are applied to the box in opposite directions, a resultant unbalanced force acts on the box. So whatever is the resultant unbalanced force, it acts on the other pan which contains 50 grams weight. Okay, so this experiment gave you the explanation of balanced and unbalanced forces from lesson number 3. This unbalanced force imparts motion to the box and the box starts moving in the direction of the unbalanced force. Okay, so what happens? This unbalanced force, it will try to move, starts moving in the direction of the unbalanced force. Okay, so this was the explanation for inference and conclusion. I hope you have understood the types of forces, balanced and unbalanced forces, from this activity, which was based on lesson number 3, force and pressure. Okay, next experiments we will see in the upcoming videos. Thank you. Hello students, good morning everyone. Students, in this video we are going to learn experiment number 4. Okay, what is the aim of the experiment? Let us see that. The aim of the experiment is to study the inertia of the state of rest. Students, in the upcoming video, I have demonstrated you, okay, an activity to study the inertia of the state of rest. Yes, observe the video. Yes, go through the video carefully. A very good morning to all my students. Students of standard 8th class, please pay attention here. We are going to perform experiment number 4. Okay, in experiment number 4, the very first A type, to study the inertia of the state of rest. Okay, I repeat, to study the inertia of the state of rest. So this particular activity I will show you. What are the materials I would need, okay, or what are the requirements here? Let us see one by one. I need a postcard or a card paper also you can take, and a 5 rupee coin, and then a glass. Okay, these three things I will require. Okay, so what is the procedure I will tell you, and then I will show you the demonstration. What is the procedure, students? We have to take this postcard or a piece of card paper and keep it on the glass. Okay, this way we have to keep it on the glass, and upon it I have to place a 5 rupee coin on the postcard or the card paper. Okay, after doing this, we have to flick the card paper. We have to flick this card paper this way, skillfully. I have to flick this card paper. Okay, and then I have to observe the motion of the coin. Our main focus will be observation of this coin. Okay, what changes happens, or what happens to this coin, whether it moves along with the card paper or it goes straight away in the glass or anywhere else, whatever. Okay, in which way it will go, that we are going to observe this. Okay, so take a postcard. Again I will repeat the procedure. Take a postcard or a piece of paper, okay, and place it on the glass, and then place the 5 rupee coin on the postcard. Yes, and now we have to flick the postcard. Okay, you have to do it very skillfully and observe and note the motion of the coin. So I will show you how to do this. Okay, students, done. What is observation? What observation can you see? The card moves forward. Can you see the card has fallen here? It moves forward, and the coin falls into the glass. The coin straight away falls into the glass. Correct? So what is the conclusion, or what is the inference, students, or what do we understand? See, when we flick the card quickly, the force is applied on the card. Yes, the force is applied on the card. The postcard moves forward due to this applied force. Whatever force I have applied, due to this applied force, the card moves, or the card paper moves forward. And what happens in the absence of adequate frictional force between the coin and the postcard or the card paper? The coin does not move forward with the postcard. Instead, what happens? It goes inside the glass. Yes? So this is an example of inertia of the state of rest. Okay, I hope you have understood the activity, what I have just demonstrated. You have understood this. Okay, you have to flick the card. You have to flick this card paper. Yes, skillfully, and you have seen how the piece or how the 5 rupee coin has directly is been placed inside the glass. It is inside the glass now. See. Okay, I hope you have understood this activity to study the inertia of the state of rest. Thank you. Good morning, my sunshines. Students, experiment plays a central role in science education as in science itself. With this important note, let us start our science experiment number 5. This experiment belongs to lesson number 3, force and pressure. Okay, so let's get started. Experiment number 5. Title of the experiment is Study of Archimedes Principle. Okay, we are going to understand this experiment under 5 subheadings: aim, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. Aim of the experiment is to study the Archimedes principle. Students, we have already learned Archimedes principle. His statement is very clear to all of us. Let us understand this activity or this experiment to make our concepts more clear and understanding. Okay. So let's start with requirement first. Blocks of iron, copper and aluminium I will require. Blocks will be, can you see the shape of the blocks here? Side of length 2 centimeter is taken approximately. Wood would not be required, but these three blocks of iron, copper and aluminium is required. Spring balance, an overflow vessel. Students, if you observe the overflow vessel, there is a outlet. Yes. So please observe it carefully. A measuring cylinder, where when water is placed in this, we can actually measure the amount of water, how much it is collected. So it is a measuring cylinder. An iron stand. Can you see clamp on iron stand? Water and a string. These are the requirements for this experiment. Let us understand the procedure. Okay. First step. Hang a spring balance from an iron stand using a clamp. Take the iron block and weigh it by hanging it from the hook of the spring balance using a string. Yes, the very first thing what we have to do, students, we have to measure the weight of the iron block in air. Okay, with the help of the spring balance, we can measure the iron block. Okay, very easily. And that you will note down as W1. W1. So find the weight of the solid block in air as W1 and note it. How much is the weight of the iron block in air, that I will note. Second is, take an overflow vessel and fill it with water to the brim of its outlet. We have to take the overflow vessel as I shown in the requirements. We have to fill it with water to the brim of its outlet. Till the outlet layer you will fill it. And place a beaker below the outlet of the overflow vessel to collect the displaced water. See, whatever water will flow from the outlet, it will be collected in a beaker, and whatever collected water in the beaker, it will be transferred to the measuring cylinder to measure how much water is displaced or how much water is collected. Okay, so understood the setup, a spring balance, and down we have an overflow vessel, and then near the outlet of the overflow vessel we have a beaker to collect water. And students, remember, whatever steps we are doing, it will be carried out for all the three blocks: iron, copper and aluminium. Okay, so the first thing for iron I'm discussing about. Similarly, you have to repeat it for copper block and aluminium block. Now start lowering the block attached to the spring balance into the water in the overflow vessel. So you know that iron block is attached to the spring balance. We have already measured the weight of iron block in air. Now these iron block, I will lower it into the water, that is overflow vessel. And now what will happen? So once it is immersed, what will happen? Some water will be displaced. Yes, and this displaced water will be collected through the outlet in the beaker which is kept aside under the outlet. Now note the weight of the block as it is completely immersed in the water. What will happen? In the spring balance, I can measure the weight of the iron block. And that weight I have to note it down as W2. W1 will be weight in air. W2 will be when it is immersed in water. Okay. So find the loss in weight of the block W1 minus W2 in water. Now what I have to do, W1 will be always more, students, than W2. As we have seen, any object which is immersed in water, okay, it will lose its weight. So obviously W1 minus W2 I have to find out. Okay, find the volume of the water collected in the beaker by using a measuring cylinder. As I said, water which is collected in the beaker, it will be transferred to the measuring cylinder. Okay, now 7th step is very important here. Assuming that 1 ml of water, what we have to assume, that if 1 ml of water is 1 gram weight, we have to determine the weight of the displaced water. We have to determine how much water is displaced. Okay, so students, for example, if 5 ml of water is collected in the beaker and that I have transferred to the measuring cylinder. So 5 ml of water means how many gram weight? 5 gram weight of the water displaced is the measurement. And same procedure I have to repeat it for copper block and aluminum block. Students, after comparing both the values, okay, of loss in weight of all the three blocks, W1 minus W2, that means W1 minus W2, three readings I will get. One for iron block, other for aluminum block, and third for copper block. After seeing all these calculations, we are going to draw a conclusion. Okay, let us see the observation. Students, any object or body completely or partially submerged in a fluid, it can be a gas or a liquid, at rest is acted upon by an upward or buoyant force, the magnitude of which is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced by the body. We already know what is buoyancy and buoyant forces. The upward direction force, that is equal to the weight of the water which is displaced by the object, by the body. Now here body means blocks, all the three blocks. So it is completely or partially submerged. It is always acted upon by an upward or buoyant force. This is the observation. And what is the inference and conclusion, students? The loss in weight of the body in water is equal to the weight of the body displaced by the water. Okay. So when it is immersed in the water, that is very important. When it is immersed in the water. When an object is partially or fully immersed in a fluid, a force of buoyancy acts on it in the upward direction. We all know that. This force is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced by the object. This force, this buoyant force will be equal to the what? Will be equal to the weight of the fluid displaced by the object. Okay. I hope you have understood Archimedes principle now with depth understanding. Okay. So next experiment we will see in the next video. Thank you. Good morning everyone. Through practical activities, it is much easier to thread the connection between our actions and observations. Yes, particular in science. Correct? So, students, let us start our science experiment number 6. Students, this experiment is, or this activity is from lesson number 4, current, electricity and magnetism. So, let us understand this experiment in detail. So, are you all ready? Experiment number 6, verification of the magnetic effect of electric current. This is the title of the experiment, verification of the magnetic effect of electric current. Again, students, this experiment we are going to learn under 5 subheadings: aim, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. Okay. Aim of the experiment is to verify the magnetic effect of electric current. What are the requirements? Let us see one by one. I want a cardboard tray of a discarded matchbox. Okay. A magnetic needle, a bar magnet, an electric wire, a battery, a switch or a plug key, an electric bulb. So these are my requirements. Let us see the arrangement, how we are going to arrange this. Please observe the figure, students. This is the very own figure we have in the textbook. Okay, what is the step number 1? Take the cardboard tray from inside of a discarded matchbox. Okay, place a small magnetic needle inside it. So what I have to do? I have to take a cardboard tray, yes, from a discarded matchbox, and I have to place a small magnetic needle inside it. Can you see how it is placed? Next step is we have to wind an electric wire a few times around the cardboard tray. So what I have to do? I have to take electric wire and I have to wind it. I have to wind it continuously. Okay, some few times around this cardboard tray. Third step will be, now we have open ends of the electric wire. Yes. These two ends or these two free ends of the wire, it will be attached to a battery, through a switch and an electric bulb. Yes. So this is particular the electric circuit that we are going to complete. We are going to attach this electric wire to an electric circuit, okay, which will be containing battery, plug key, bulb, everything will be attached to it. Okay, important step. Students, point number 4. Mark the direction in which the magnetic needle is pointing. Okay, now at rest, what you have to do, I have to just see the direction, okay, in which this magnetic needle is pointing right now. Fifth step will be, I will bring a small bar magnet near the magnetic needle. First, what I will do, I will bring the bar magnet near the magnetic needle. Then again take away the magnet away from the needle. So bar magnet I will take closer, and then again I will take away from the needle, and then I will see what happens, what is observation. Sixth step. Now move the switch to the on position or close the plug key to pass the electric current through the wire and observe the deflection in the needle. Point number 6 will be, now I will move the switch to the on position. I will switch on or I will close the plug key. And what will happen once I on the plug key or on the switch, electric current will pass through the wire, and now I will observe the deflection in the needle. I will see anything changes. Okay, is there any deflection in the needle, that I will observe. So first what I did, I took a bar magnet and saw the deflection, and second time I'm passing electric current through the wire and I'm checking the deflection, whether there is a deflection in the needle. Okay, understood this? Then what I have to do now, move the switch back to the off position. Now it was on, now I will do off position or I will remove the plug key, and then again I will see the deflection. Students, what is important here, we have to find similarities in two activities. First activity was taking the bar magnet, second activity is passing the electric current through the electric wire. Yes, so these two activities I am going to observe very closely. Okay, then I'm going to draw the conclusion from the observation. Whatever is seen, I will conclude something. And what is the observation? Let us see that, students. We will see under 2 points. Students, when a bar magnet is brought near the magnetic needle, the needle gets deflected. Yes, it gets deflected. It's changed. Deflected means it will change its position. When the magnet is taken away from the needle attains its original position. So when you take near to it, it will change its direction, and again when you remove it or take away from the magnetic needle, again it will attain the original position where it was. Okay. Second observation was what? When passing electric current, right? So when an electric current is passed through the wire, the needle gets deflected. Again here also needle gets deflected. When the current is switched off, the needle attains its original position. So here on and off position, if I do on, it will deflect, off, it will not deflect. Bar magnet, if I take near it, it will deflect. Bar magnet, I will remove or take it away, it will attain its original position. So there are some similarities, right? Can you see similarities here? Okay, students, what is the inference and conclusion? The very first point. The needle of a compass is a tiny magnet. Okay, in the compass, you have a very small magnet. Okay, which when freely suspended points in the north-south direction. When it is free, it will position in north-south direction. When we bring a magnet close to it, when I take a bar magnet close to it, the needle gets deflected. It will change its direction due to the magnetic effect or the magnetic field around it. Second point, the magnetic needle also gets deflected when the current flows in a nearby wire. See, when the wire is carrying electric current, the magnetic needle again is deflected. So what is the conclusion from these two observations, students? When an electric current passes through a wire, it behaves like a magnet. When an electric current passes through a wire, it behaves like a magnet. Thus, the magnetic effect of electric current can be verified here, can be checked here with the help of the bar magnet and the electric wire, okay, which carries electric current for us. I hope these two experiments 5 and 6 is clear to you all. Okay. Next experiments, okay, 7, 8, 9, we will see one by one in the upcoming days. Okay, till then, thank you everybody. Good morning, dear students. Students, it is rightly said that science lab experiments promote the development of scientific thinking in all of us. Okay, with this note, let us start our science experiment number 7. Students, this experiment number 7 has two parts, part 1 and part 2. So I am going to explain you in two videos. Yes, first video will be regarding part 1. Second video will be regarding part 2. Okay, hope it is clear to you. Let's get started now. We are learning experiment number 7. What is the title of the experiment? Preparation of ferric oxide and study its properties. That means what we are going to do, students, we are going to prepare ferric oxide in our laboratory. It is a compound that we are going to prepare, we are going to extract, and then after that we are going to study its different properties. Clear? Again, this experiment we are going to learn under 5 subheadings. We have aim, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. Okay, so let's understand aim in detail. Okay, the aim has two parts. Part A is to prepare the compound ferric oxide in the lab. As I said, we are going to extract it, we are going to prepare it. Part B is to study the properties of ferric oxide. After extraction, students, we are going to learn the properties of that particular compound. Okay, in this video, I will be explaining part A, how to extract, how to prepare the compound. So let us see the requirements and chemicals, what we will require. Yes, iron bolts or steel wool, any one of it I can use. A paint scraper, a beaker. Yes, for my safety, yes, I'm going to use hand gloves. A funnel, filter papers, and a mortar and pestle. These are my requirements. Let us understand the chemicals. I'm going to take 6% bleaching solution of sodium hypochlorite and water. 6% bleaching solution of sodium hypochlorite, which is very hazardous. That is why I'm going to use gloves, hand gloves, while using it. So these were the requirements and chemicals. Let us understand the procedure now. How we are going to extract it. Students, first of all, take a beaker and put iron bolts or steel wool inside it. Then I'm going to wear my safety hand gloves because I'm going to handle sodium hypochlorite, which is very hazardous, as I said. So after wearing the hand gloves, I will pour enough bleaching solution of sodium hypochlorite where inside the beaker in which iron bolts are present. And then I'm going to immerse these iron bolts in it completely. So beaker, iron bolts, hypochlorite solution, these all, everything are present inside it now. After doing this, I'm going to place this beaker in a well ventilated area and preferably under sunlight. Why? Because due to sunlight, whatever reaction will happen between iron bolt and sodium hypochlorite, okay, the speed of the reaction will increase if I'm keeping it under sunlight. And if any toxic fumes are released during the reaction, that will be dispersed in the wind, in the air. So that is why it is kept in well ventilated area, not inside the lab. I'm going to put it in a terrace or something, some other place like that, where we have well ventilation. There I'm going to place it. Let us understand step number 3. What will happen after some time? After some time, I'm going to pick the iron bolt, okay, with the help of the gloves. Again, I'm going to have hand gloves in my hand all the time while doing this experiment. And then I'm going to use a paint scraper. I'm going to scrape the iron oxide form on its surface. Okay. So with the help of the gloves in hand, I'm going to use a paint scraper. I'm going to scrape it, remove it. Yes, iron oxide which is formed on the surface of this iron bolt. Then I'm going to filter the mixture by using multiple layers of filter papers. Now whatever this mixture, reddish brown mixture is formed now, that I'm going to filter it. Why? Because I want to separate this iron oxide from this solution, from this mixture. Okay, so after multiple layers, okay, after using multiple layers of filter papers, again if there is any reddish tinge in the mixture, I'm going to keep that beaker for some time untouched, and afterwards I'm going to again filter it. So what I'm trying to explain is filtration process will be carried out. Wash the iron oxide with water to remove any residues, and then after washing it with water, I'm going to dry it under sun, and then with the help of mortar pestle, again I'm going to fine it nicely, okay, in a powdered form I'm going to prepare it. So I hope you understood the procedure for this. What is the observation, students? Let us understand. After the reaction, what happens? The mixture in the beaker becomes reddish brown. Reddish brown color is formed. After the filtration process, like, with the help of filter papers, we get a red brown particles of ferric oxide, which is our interested compound. Yes. What is the chemical reaction? Let us understand, students. Unstable sodium hypochlorite solution. Sodium hypochlorite is highly unstable in nature. It forms sodium chloride and nascent oxygen. This nascent oxygen is going to react with iron bolt. Yes, to give ferric oxide. So 2 molecules of iron is going to react with 3 molecules of nascent oxygen to give iron oxide compound. Understood the reaction? Okay, let us understand the inference or conclusion. Students, sodium hypochlorite, which is a bleaching solution, is an oxidizing agent. Highly unstable in nature, it will give out nascent oxygen, which is a very strong oxidizing agent. It is going to oxidize iron in the iron bolt to iron oxide. That is why this reddish brown color solution has formed. In this way, we get ferric oxide in the laboratory. So with the help of iron bolt or steel wool, I am going to get iron oxide compound. It can be easily extracted. Okay, with all safety things, we are going to extract it in the laboratory. I hope part A is clear to you all. Yes. Part B. Yes, part B, that is studying the properties of ferric oxide, we will see in the next video. Thank you. Welcome back, students. Students, we are understanding science experiment number 7, part 2. Part 1 is already completed. We have already extracted ferric oxide in the laboratory. Now let us understand its properties, okay, one by one. So let's get started. Yeah, students, we are performing experiment number 7, and the title of the experiment is Preparation of Ferric Oxide and Study Its Properties. Part B also will be studied under 5 subheadings: aim, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. Okay. Let us revise our aim, both the parts. Yes. Part A was to prepare the compound ferric oxide in the lab, that we have already done. Part B is to study the properties of ferric oxide now. Once we have extracted now in the dry form, we are going to understand the properties of it. Okay. Let's see the requirements and chemicals for part B to study the properties of ferric oxide. What are the requirements? First of all, I will require test tubes. I will require test tubes. I will require a test tube stand. Test tube stand is what? It is used for keeping my test tubes. Yes, in a straight position. What are the chemicals? Let us see. Yes, students, this is the ferric oxide which I have obtained in part B, that I have extracted from part A process. Okay. In the watch glass, I have kept actually the iron oxide, ferric oxide. Same, iron oxide and ferric oxide is one of the same name. Okay. Then I'm going to have water, dilute hydrochloric acid and concentrated hydrochloric acid. Dilute hydrochloric acid and concentrated hydrochloric acid. Okay. So these are the requirements and these are my chemicals. Let's start the procedure for part B. Okay, students, what we will do first? First, have you seen in the watch glass I have kept iron oxide or ferric oxide? What I will do, I will observe it and I will note down the state, in which state it is, whether it is in solid, liquid or gaseous state. and I'm going to smell it. I'm going to just, not very closely, you just have to keep it at a distance and smell it. Don't take your nose very close to the compound. Okay, so you have to note down the odor. I'm going to note down the state, in which state it is, how it is appear, what is appearance of it, which color it is. So this is observation, actually observation process I will do. Second, I will take a nice clean test tube, and then I am going to add small amount of iron oxide in it. So whatever iron oxide I have collected, that I am going to add it. Then what I will do, then I will add water in it, and I will shake the mixture. I will shake the test tube very nicely and observe and note the change which has occurred. Whatever changes have occurred after mixing iron oxide or ferric oxide and water, that note or change I will note. Okay, so adding water, I will check what happens. Third is, I will take another test tube. Okay, we have so many test tubes. First test tube I have already used. Second test tube I will use it. Okay, again in that I'm going to add iron oxide, and then I'm going to add dilute hydrochloric acid. As I said in the chemicals, I want dilute hydrochloric acid and I want concentrated hydrochloric acid. So first what I will do, I will add dilute hydrochloric acid. Again I will shake the mixture and the test tube, everything, and I will observe and note the change. What happened in the test tube, what is the mixture color and everything I will see. Then let us see the next steps, what other things we have to do. Fourth step will be, I have to take a third test tube. So total 3 test tubes we will take. First for water, second for adding dilute hydrochloric acid, and third for adding concentrated hydrochloric acid. So take a third test tube and put small amount of iron oxide in it. Then add concentrated hydrochloric acid. Shake the mixture, shake the test tube, and again observe and change. Whatever changes have occurred, you have to note it. Okay, so basically procedure is clear. What all things I have done. First I have done observation, then I am going to add the iron oxide and water I have added, and I have checked what happens. Then I have added dilute hydrochloric acid, okay, in another test tube to check its solubility, whether it is soluble or not. Okay, what is the color of the mixture. Again I have used concentrated hydrochloric acid. So 2-3 things I have done to understand the properties. Let us understand the observation. I am going to draw an observation table. Okay, property is, the very first property would be state and appearance. Okay, I'm going to list down state, appearance, odor, solubility in water, solubility in acid. These are my main entries. Observation would be, it is red, brown, solid. What is odor? Odorless, no odor, odorless. Solubility in water, remember we have taken a test tube where I have added water. Okay, in that test tube, students, what do I observe? You know that iron oxide is insoluble in water. Okay, so that is the observation. Then solubility in acids, let us see. Iron oxide is soluble in dilute and concentrated acids. Very interesting. It is insoluble in water, but it is readily soluble in dilute and dilute hydrochloric acid and concentrated hydrochloric acid. So these were the properties, these were the observations that we have done, students. We have understood the properties actually with this. Let us understand the inference and conclusion now. Yes, this is my compound now that we have extracted. Okay, students, ferric oxide is a red, brown, odorless solid. Ferric oxide is a red, brown, odorless solid. It is insoluble in water but soluble in dilute or concentrated acids. This is what we have learned from the properties, and this is the observation that we have made, that only we have concluded. Okay, I hope you have understood ferric oxide or iron oxide in detail, how we have extracted, after extraction, after drying under sun, how we are going to study its properties, first mixing with water, then mixing dilute acid, mixing with concentrated acid, yes, studying its odor, appearance, everything. Okay, so I hope experiment number 7 is clear to you and all, readily understandable. Okay, very easy but very interesting, right? Okay, thank you so much. Later experiments we will see in the next upcoming videos. Thank you. Good morning everyone. Students, experiment is an action to find the reaction of any test. Correct? So with this, let us start our science experiment number 8, part 1. Students, this experiment, that is experiment number 8, contains two videos. Okay, it contains two videos, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 will include aim, requirements, procedure. Part 2 will include observations, inference or conclusion. Okay, since it is a big experiment to understand, so we are going to divide it into two parts. Okay, so let's get started. Experiment number 8. What is the title of our experiment? Physical and chemical properties of metals and non-metals. Students, you have guessed it right. This experiment is from lesson number 7, metals and non-metals. Again, we are going to understand this experiment under 5 subheadings: aims, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. In this video, I will going to explain you 3 parts, that is aim, requirements and procedure. Let us understand the aim in detail. What is the purpose of this experiment, students? What is the aim of the experiment? We are going to perform a comparative study of physical and chemical properties of metals and non-metals. We are going to compare both the physical and chemical properties of metals and non-metals in this experiment. Okay, now let us understand the requirements for this experiment. I would require a copper vessel, Bunsen burner or a spirit lamp also you can take, pair of tongs, dry cell, connecting wires of copper, 1.5 volt bulb, iron nails, a wooden spoon, test tube stand. So these are the requirements, and let us see what chemicals I would require. Students, I want pieces of copper wire, iron wire and magnesium ribbon. Some pieces of coal we want. Yes, we want bromine liquid, pencil lead. Yes, we know that lead is present in pencil, so we can take pencil lead, wax. This is the zinc dust or dust powder, okay, of zinc, and this is dilute hydrochloric acid, HCl. So let us understand the procedure now. What all things we are going to do? The very first thing what we are going to do is, for copper vessel, take a copper vessel and clean it with lemon and water. Observe the surface of the vessel. Then take a piece of coal, then again you wash it with water and observe its surface. See, copper vessel here is an example of metal. When you clean it with lemon, it is going to give you a nice particular shine or luster. But if you take the piece of coal, if you wash it with water, nothing is going to be shiny, right? Lustrous. It is not lustrous at all. So the small things we are going to do. So that was for copper vessel and coal. Second is, observe the physical states of copper wire, iron nail, coal, bromine in air, whatever. So you have to just observe, okay, these all requirements that we have taken: copper wire, iron nail, coal, bromine in air, at room temperature, how it looks, everything we are going to study, their physical states. Then third, what is the third step? Let us understand. You have to take a piece of copper wire and you have to fix some wax at one of its end. Okay, take a copper wire and fix some wax. Heat the other end and observe. That means on both sides, one side you will have wax and other side you will start heating. And the same thing or the same experiment you will do with the piece of lead pencil, and then you will note the observations. Let us see the diagram here. Yeah, this is the presentation, students, how we are going to do. We have a spirit lamp. Okay, you can take Bunsen burner that I have showed in requirements. Then copper wire is there with the help of pair of tongs. You don't have to directly catch it with hand. With a pair of tongs, what is done? Copper wire, okay, with the help of pair of tongs, and the other side we have wax. So we are going to heat the copper wire at one end. Second figure, if you see, I am going to take lead, pencil lead. There also, with the help of pair of tongs, I am going to heat it, and other side we will be having wax. Observations we will see later. So first understand what things we are going to do. Next, yes, I'm going to connect one dry cell and electric bulb to each other in series with the help of connecting wires. That means I'm going to arrange an electric circuit. Remember, in current electricity, we have learned how to connect an electric circuit. Then place a small piece of magnesium ribbon on the table. Touch both the ends, that is both the free ends of connecting wire to both the ends of the magnesium ribbon. That means we are going to include magnesium ribbon in the electric circuit. Observe what happens with the bulb. Okay, we will check whether electric current will pass or not. That we will check when we are connecting magnesium ribbon. Then repeat the same experiments by replacing magnesium ribbon by a small piece of coal. See, I will show you how, what is the picture that I will show you. See, can you see? In the first figure, magnesium ribbon is attached. In the second figure, piece of coal is attached. Magnesium ribbon, can you see the electric bulb is glowing? That means it conducts electricity. But piece of coal, it is not. We will conclude later. Okay, next what I have to do. Take an iron nail, then place it on a platform and keep on hammering it. Okay, continuously for some time. After some time, you have to observe what is the surface of the iron nail. So, and then after using iron nail, I'm going to use a small piece of coal. Again, with the coal, I am going to do the same thing. I'm going to hammer it. I'm going to hammer the piece of coal. So that one thing we can do. Sixth is we can take a small piece of pencil lead and hammer it. So I can hammer iron nail, I have to hammer coal and then pencil lead. Small things we have to carry out. Okay, this way. Can you see? Iron nail hammer, hammering of iron nail, and here you have hammering of piece of coal. We all know what will happen. Next, what we are going to do? We are going to take one steel vessel and heat it by a wooden spoon. Pair of tongs. Repeat the same procedure for a coal piece. Okay. Take one steel vessel. Again, with the steel vessel, we are going to heat it. Okay, by a wooden spoon, we are going to heat. We are going to hit it because we want sound to create. I think we are going to check the sonority of sound here. Then same thing you can repeat it for coal piece, black color coal piece. So you are going to check the sonority here. Then eighth is take piece of magnesium ribbon, hold it in and burn it on the hold it in and burn it on the flame. That means I'm going to use a burner here. Repeat the same procedure for a piece of coal. So that means for magnesium ribbon, I'm going to first heat it and then I'm going to use going to heat piece of coal. So here heating process will be carried out. Okay. Last, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take dilute hydrochloric acid in a test tube. I'm going to take a clean dry test tube, add hydrochloric acid into it, and then I'm going to dust some zinc onto it. Zinc dust I'm going to add it. Then students, you know what I have already explained. To check the presence of hydrogen gas, what we do, we use a splinter. A glowing splinter we take near the test tube, and if the sound comes, a third sound comes, that means hydrogen gas is present. So basically we are going to check whether hydrogen gas is present or not. And the same experiment we have to repeat it with coal powder. We have to convert this coal into a powder form, and then we will again mix it with hydrochloric acid, and we are going to check whether glowing splinter will give this third sound or not. Okay, pop-up sound that I have already explained before. So these few things we are going to act on these different metals and non-metals to check their properties. I hope you have understood till procedure what all things we are going to do. Okay, this is random. We are trying to study the properties of metals and non-metals and we are going to compare it, right? Observations and conclusions we will see in the next video. Thank you. Welcome back, students. Students, in part 1 of experiment number 8, we have seen what is the aim of the experiment, what are different requirements, chemicals, what different procedures we have carried out on metals and non-metals. Now it's time to understand observations, inference and conclusion. Let us make an observation table. Let us conclude all the things that we have done. Okay, so are you all ready? Students, we are learning experiment number 8. Physical and chemical properties of metals and non-metals is our title. We have already covered aim, requirements, procedure. Let's understand observations, inference or conclusion. RM of the experiment, to revise, was to perform a comparative study of physical and chemical properties of metals and non-metals. Okay. So let us first understand observations of this particular experiment. Students, this is the observation table that I was talking about. Can you see the serial number? It has total 9 properties. We have 9 properties. The very first one, we have luster. Okay. Observation for metals and non-metals, there are 2 columns. Okay, ahead. For metals, luster. Okay, surface looks shiny or lustrous. Remember copper vessel that we washed it with lemon and water. So it was shiny, it gave a luster. Non-metals, surface does not look shiny or lustrous. Remember the piece of coal that we tried to wash it with water? Nothing happened, right? It is not going to shine. So metals look shiny, non-metals does not look shiny. So this is clear, a metal and non-metal. Physical state. Okay, metals like copper and iron are in solid state. We have seen copper wire, iron wire. Non-metals, carbon is in solid state, that is coal. Coal means carbon, huh? Yes. Bromine is in liquid state, and all components of air are in gaseous state. Yes, all the components of air that which are present, they are all in gaseous state. Bromine is in liquid state and carbon is in solid. That means non-metals can exist in all the 3 forms: solid, liquid, gas. This is what we can conclude, right, or observe. Third is conduction of heat. After some time, for metals, remember, after some time, other end becomes hot and wax melts. Okay, for copper wire, I think we have done, right, that experiment where we have heated one side of copper wire, we have provided heat, and the other side of the wax melts. Then for non-metals, after very long time, other end of pencil lead becomes hot and wax melts. Remember, with the copper wire, we have heated lead pencil also. But what is the observation? After very long time, the wax melts. That means it takes times to conduct heat. Can we conclude this? Okay. Conduction of electricity. Metals, bulb glows. Remember the magnesium ribbon we have attached in the electric circle, bulb glows. Non-metals, bulb does not glow. Piece of coal was attached to the electric circuit. If you see the figure, when you're learning observation, please have the figures in front of you. Okay. Fifth is malleability. Okay, iron becomes flat, thin, sheet-like structure. That means it is malleable. Whereas when you hammer the piece of coal, it gets converted into small particles, small pieces. Coming to hardness and brittleness, let us see. The nail does not break into pieces, right? Nail does not break, but pencil lead breaks into small pieces. Sonority. Remember sonority. Steel vessel was copper vessel or steel vessel. Yes, it was hit with a wooden spoon. It produces a peculiar sound. But non-metal students, they do not produce any peculiar sound. So that is one observation. Reaction with oxygen. It forms a white ash of magnesium oxide. When you heat this magnesium ribbon in presence of oxygen, we get magnesium oxide, which is nothing but white ash. Okay, and for non-metals, carbon dioxide is formed. Okay, if you see when you react non-metals with oxygen, we get carbon dioxide. Means carbon plus oxygen will give you carbon dioxide. Reaction with acid. Remember, zinc dust was mixed with dilute hydrochloric acid. What do we get? Hydrogen gas. Remember, I have said that glowing splinter you have to take near the test tube and then a pop-up sound will come. So metals, metals, when they react with hydrochloric acid, hydrogen gas is released. For non-metals, no reaction observed. Remember coal powder, when it is again added with hydrochloric acid, students, no reaction is observed. So this is the table, which itself is very interesting. Chemical reaction, as I explained, magnesium when reacts with oxygen, it gives you magnesium oxide, MgO. Carbon with oxygen will give you carbon dioxide, CO2. Zinc plus dilute hydrochloric acid gives you zinc chloride plus hydrogen gas. Remember, we are going to check the hydrogen gas with the help of glowing splinter. So I hope the observations are clear. Let us seek inference and conclusion, students, one by one. Very first point, metals are lustrous in nature while non-metals do not have luster. At room temperature, metals are in solid state, exception mercury, which is in liquid state, that we have studied in the chapter also. At room temperature, non-metals occur in solid, liquid and gaseous state. Very simple to understand. Third is metals are good conductors of heat, while non-metals are bad conductors of heat. Next points, let us see point number 4. Metals are good conductors of electricity, while non-metals are bad conductors of electricity. Metals are malleable, while non-metals are not malleable. Metals are hard except sodium and potassium. Yes, they can be easily cut with knife. While non-metals are brittle in nature, but except diamond, diamond is really hard. Yes, so there are certain exceptions also that we have studied in the chapter. Metals are sonorous while non-metals are non-sonorous. They do not produce sound. Okay, point number 8. Metals and non-metals combine with oxygen to form their oxides. Yes, both of them combine with oxygen to form oxides. Most of the metals, what they do? They react with dilute acid to form metal salts. Remember, zinc chloride was formed when zinc was reacted with hydrochloric acid. Zinc chloride and hydrogen gas was released, right? So metal salt means here is zinc chloride. Hydrogen gas is released when, in which case it is, this is the case of metals I am talking about. Non-metals do not react with dilute acids. So this is one more particular or peculiar feature or property of metals and non-metals. Okay, I hope you all have understood experiment number 8 in detail and enjoyed also. Yes, this is something that we already know in the chapter, but we are understanding it much deeper way, or deeper understanding is already occurred now. Yes, so the last experiment, students, that is experiment number 9, we will see in the upcoming days. Okay, thank you. Good morning, dear students. In the process of learning science, the skill of performing experiments is necessary for observation, logic, conclusion, comparison, and application of received information. Students, we have reached to our last experiment, that is science experiment number 9. So, are you all excited and ready? Let's get started. We are going to study experiment number 9. What is the title of our experiment? Let us understand that. Comparative study of polluted and non-polluted water bodies. Okay, we are going to compare and we are going to study, okay, polluted and non-polluted water bodies. Okay, under 5 subheadings. Okay, now you all are well versed with these 5 subheadings. Which are those? Aim, requirements, procedure, observations, inference or conclusion. Correct. Let us understand in detail about aim of the experiment. What is the purpose of the experiment, student? This is a field study actually. Okay, to perform a comparative study of polluted and non-polluted water bodies in the surroundings. Okay, in our surroundings we have to observe and we have to compare two different regions. One is polluted, other is non-polluted. Let us understand the requirements. I would require some sampling bottles, nets, pH paper. Students, what is pH paper? pH paper is used to determine if a solution, okay, any solution is acidic, basic or neutral. Now this particular package that you see, okay, it comes in often different color coded scale. Can you see color coded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, yes. That will indicate something. Okay, that is going to something. When the pH paper turns to a particular color, that is going to indicate something, whether it is acidic, basic or neutral. So colors, can you see, for pink color it is 1, orange it is 3. So these are pH papers. We are going to dip these pH papers in the solution. I hope that is clear. Then we want scoops, different types of scoops for collecting either sand or soil. Yeah, collecting bags, we require, students, to collect samples. I'll tell you what we have to do. And some forceps we want. Okay, these are the requirements. Let us understand the procedure. First of all, the area of the study should be demarcated. Demarcated means should be separated. Okay, distinctly we have to separate that area of study. The pond, lake or river nearer to the school must be chosen for the study. Okay, it can be a pond, lake or river. Also, another water body can be located which is away from the city or town. So one river, pond or lake which is nearer to the school, and another water body, okay, which can be again a pond, lake or river which is away from the city or town. That first thing we can do. Second thing is like the seashore near the city. Okay, if there is any seashore near the city, that can be utilized as a field of study, or the seashore which is away from the city, that also can be used or selected for the topic, for study topic. So either pond, lake or river you take, or you take seashore near the city and away from the city. Next, let us see what we have to do. Okay, we have to understand something. Students, there is a greater chance of the pollution of water bodies which are near to the industries, factories or urban regions, correct? Pollution will be more in the water bodies as compared to such water body, the one which is away from the city area or away from any industrial activity should be less polluted. Basically, the water body which is nearer to the industries which will be more polluted, obviously, yes, as compared to water body which is away from the city area. This is a second point. Third, students, after the areas are chosen, now I have to finalize which areas I have to study. Then the field study would be undertaken. Once I choose the area, I will study that particular region now. Date of sampling should be decided. Okay, the date on which I'm going to collect the samples from that particular region, that will be decided. I can take water samples. I can take samples of soil or sand. Okay, if I see any organisms, that also can be collected, but this activity we have to do under the supervision of teachers only. Okay, this is a field study. Fourth point, note down the conditions near the water bodies that you select. You have to be a good observer now. Okay, you have to see certain things like, is there any industry present nearby? Is there any effluents are released in the water body from the industries? Are people using this water body for washing, cleaning, bathing, washing cattle, defecating? If this water is utilized for these things, also you note that if any sewage disposal, okay, it has been done in the water body directly or treated one, so these things we have to observe. You can also see for any dead fish if it is present all around. So basically you have to be a good observer here. Next, what we have to do, these water and soil samples that we have collected in the collecting box, we are going to take it to our laboratory. Okay, there we will do some simple tests, like we are going to see the state of the water, what is the color of the water, odor, smell. We are going to use a pH paper to indicate, okay, to determine the pH of the solution or water sample. These things can be done. Some more chemical test can be done with the help of teacher, like, how much salt is contained, that means salinity will be checked, oxygen content, carbon dioxide content, this everything will be done under chemical testing. So teachers can do that, and then they can convey actually what is the sample all about. Very important point, live organisms should not be caught but can be photographed and noted. You don't have to catch any living organism there, you just have to take a snapshot or photograph. Dead shells, if any, if see, this can be with regards to seashore. I think dead shells can be present near the seashore, so it can be picked up. That will indicate, okay, some animals are present there. We have to note down what different plant species that area has. Fill all the data in the form of observation table, students. Okay, that we have to do. See, now since we are not going for field study, or not, we are not going to practically do this, but we should understand this, how it is all about. Okay, if we after performing this, we have to make a table, what all things we have collected, and also a comparison will be made in a tabular form, and you have to enter all these observations in a table. Okay, in a table, observation table will be made. So I hope you have understood that. What, see, observations, we all know that. Comparison between two sites shows that parameters like pH of water, color of water, odor of water, observations about the site, plant species and animal species, Everything is different for polluted and non-polluted water. We are collecting two samples now, one from polluted region, other from non-polluted water body. So if you sit and compare, everything will be different, parameters will be totally different. Okay, so this is the observation, students. Let us understand inference and conclusion. Students, from the above observations one can conclude which site is more polluted body, right? Which site is more polluted body? The polluted body shows different parameters as against the non-polluted water body. Yes, polluted water body, will have odor of the water will be different, the state of the water will be different. Yes, the salinity of the water will be different. These are different parameters, right? That will be different as against with the non-polluted body. I hope you have understood this particular field study. Very interesting, right? Something we are going to do a field study where we select regions. One is polluted, other is non-polluted. Water bodies we are talking about. Okay. I hope you have understood this experiment. Okay. So students, this was our last experiment, experiment number 9. I hope you all enjoyed watching science experiments and writing it down in the science experiment book. Okay. Thank you so much for your cooperation.